Okay, so welcome parents, students to our first part of our three-part compass series. So this one will be focusing for the year 10 and year 9 students with their year 11 subject selection. So thank you very much for spending the Sunday afternoon hearing our tuition center in what we have to offer. So before we start, just 3 quick housekeeping rules. First is that if we can we please keep ourselves on mute to reduce the background noise? The second, if for any unforeseen reasons that this particular call drops, don't be alarmed, just log in using the same login details and we will restart the meeting. And lastly, if you have any questions throughout this seminar, make sure you type it into the message tab. And at the end of the seminar, we'll spend some time and answer each one of you the questions you have. We'll keep this very casual and conversational, and this is going to be very jam-packed. We'll try to get everything done in about an hour, okay? So today, there's going to be 3 or 4 parts to this seminar. We'll quickly address our idea of the perfect subject for a year 11 students, and then we will be going through a commonly asked question for upcoming year 11 student, which is the idea of scaling. And then our panel of subject experts from our center will go through some of the popular subjects ranging from chemistry, physics, 3-unit maths, and 3-unit English. And lastly, we'll go through our OpenWisdom way of success. So quickly, we'll start with a very simple slide that summarizes the essence of today's seminar. And then we'll break these slides down into its components throughout the next hour. So what is the perfect subject for you for year 11? Now, to condense all the ideas into one slide, we would say that the perfect subject is made up of 4 parts. The first part is your interest and curiosity. The second part is whether it's good scaling or not. The third component, your level of skill in this subject. And lastly, this subject's proximity to other subjects. Now, at this beginning, you might be thinking, what is this person talking about? This will make more sense throughout this seminar because we'll break down the scaling component, which is quite technical to you. And by the end of this seminar, from our panel of experts, you will see whether the subjects you may perhaps choosing for next year could be interesting and curious for you. So we'll get on with the first part, scaling. Before we continue, I would like to do a very quick introduction about myself. Some of the parents and students might be wondering, who is this crazy person talking at this stage? So my name is James. I did a combined law and civil engineering degree at UNSW. I achieved an ATAR of 99.65 and I was the dux of my school. And then I also achieved a AAA scholarship from UNSW. So to start with the scaling discussion, I would like to go through a very quick progression check on what the year 11 and year 12 landscape is like. So in many students from year 7 to year 10, you have 4 terms throughout a year. Now, year 11 and year 12 is slightly different because in year 11, you only have 3 terms for this year, but year 12 will be 4 terms. At the end, you'll be going through your HSC, which is in term 4. Now, hypothetically speaking, if you're a year 11 student, your HSC will be in 2023. At this stage, you're almost done with term 2 and beginning term 3, which means that you have only about a year and a bit left with your HSC journey. And for most of the audience that's on this call right now, you're currently in year 10. Your 2024 HSC can be broken up by this bottom flowchart. Now, there's a misconception amongst a lot of students and parents. They believe that all the marks that you receive in year 11 and year 12 will count towards HSC. So that's misconception number 1. As you can see on this flowchart at the bottom, all the marks you get in year 11 do not count towards your HSC. Only the marks that you achieve in year 12 will count towards your HSC. So in other words, you can treat year 11 as a practice round for the more serious HSC year. Okay. Are we still keeping up okay? Is this all making sense? Thumbs up. Okay. So no questions so far, that's good. All right, so moving on. Now, with year 11 preliminary subject selection, here is the summary of the guidelines. If you're a year 10 student about to select your subjects, for year 11, you must complete at least 12 units before you progress to year 12. Out of the 12 units that you pick, at least 2 units has to be English, and then you need to pick 5 more subjects, together making up the 12 units. So for example, a student may have choose this set: 2 unit advanced English, 3 unit maths, which is also called extension 1 maths, 2 unit chemistry, 2 unit physics, 2 unit modern history, and 2 unit business studies. Add up all this together, that's 13 units. So this student qualifies for the year 11 subject selection. Most subjects for year 11 are 2 units. There are some exceptions. For example, maths extension 1, that's a 3 unit subject. English extension, that's a 3 unit subject. And year 12, you may pick extension 2 English, which is a 4 unit subject. And then lastly, science extension, that's also can be picked in year 12. Now, you've completed year 11, you're about to start year 12. But what's going to happen is that you do not start from 0 again. You'll continue with the subjects that you've picked in year 11 and progress into year 12. Now, as a year 11 student, you picked more than 12 units. But once you start year 12, you do not need to complete all 12 units for HSC. You only need to go into HSC with 10 units. Now, out of the 10 units, 2 units has to be English, and then you have 4 other subjects. As a year 12 student, you may choose to add or remove subjects from your year 11 subjects to give you a best chance of success for the HSC exam. Now, some students may pick more than 10 units because they feel that having an extra unit may be safe for the HSC ATAR calculation. But NESA will only pick the top 10 units out of the 12 or 13 you do, and then only the top 10 units will count towards your ATAR. So here's a very common question asked by many students, which is, should we do 10 units for HSC or should we do 11 units or more for HSC? So using the same example in the previous slide, this student in year 11 has picked these sets of units. Now, this student might drop one of this extension of 1 unit down to a 2 unit maths, which makes it 12 units for year 12. So this student has dropped from 13 units down to year 12. Alternatively, this student may drop both modern history and business studies, but then take up an extra unit of extension 2 maths, which is 4 unit maths, which will make up 10 units for year 12. All right, so these are the 2 options that a student may make. So here's the table of summary on the pros and cons of whether choosing 10 units, 11 units, or 12 units. So this is probably the gem of this slide up to now. So if you want to take a picture, feel free to do that. It's okay. But I'll quickly summarize this. On the left, you have the 10 units. The pros of choosing 10 units is that the time you spend on HSC will be very focused, because by the end of you finish your year 11 journey, you should know out of the 12 units you picked, which of the 10 units out of the 12 will be your best 10 units. So you can use your time more efficiently to get the best result. But on the downside, if you pick 10 units, it's a bit risky because all 10 units that you picked for year 12 will count towards your ATAR. Alternatively, if you pick 11 or 12 units for HSC, it's less risky, but you have to spend more time on the 2 extra units or 1 extra unit that might not even count towards your HSC. But then we still get students that love to ask us, but OpenWisdom, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should pick? So from our experience in the past, what we find is that if you're a student who prefers to do more of the science or maths focused subjects, such as you pick a 3-unit maths, chemistry, physics, these sort of STEM subject, we recommend you to pick 10 units for HSC. And the reason is because after you've done many past papers, you'll generally see a trend in the questions, and most questions can be derived from the syllabus dot points, so we can prepare for it. On the other side, if you're a student who pick more of the humanities subjects or subjects that require major work, for example, 4-unit English, which requires a major work, extension music, which requires a major work, science extension. For the major work subject, we recommend you pick 11 or 12 units, because a lot of these humanities subjects or major work subjects, the marking can be a bit subjective and it's less predictable. So that would be our recommendation. So it depends on your subject selection. Are we okay up to now? Does this all make sense? Thumbs up? Okay. No questions so far. That's good. All right. So let's look at this from a bigger picture, because as a tutoring center, we like to look at this from an objective lens as well. If you look at the 2020 UAC report, you can see that most students that do HSC pick 10 units. So 49.3% of the student going to HSC doing 10 units. Now, hypothetically say you've completed your HSC, your year 11, now you're progressing into year 12. In year 12, as I said from the beginning, the marks you get in year 12 will count towards your HSC. And there will be 4 main assessments that you'll take throughout the year. Just be mindful that the first term of year 12 actually starts in term 4, year 11. So the first term of year 12 will start around October. You will be getting roughly 4 big assessments throughout the year, and these 4 assessments will determine your subject rank in your school. The 4 combined result and the 50% of the actual HSC mark together will give you a HSC mark. Now, at this stage, because most of the students online are year 10, you do not need to worry at this stage what this means. We will be running the second part of this compass series in around the first term of your year 11 journey, where we'll go through the idea of subject ranking school in more details. But at this stage, all you need to know is that 50% of your HSC result is affected by the actual HSC, and the other 50% of your HSC result is affected by a combination of both the HSC mark and your subject ranked within your school, which is quite important. So, but you don't need to worry the intricacies at this stage. So another questions that our parents like to ask for a year 10 level is that what is the difference between HSC mark and ATAR? HSC is just a subject mark, whereas ATAR is a rank. And ATAR is what university uses for admission. So we take this student, for example, who has picked advanced English, chemistry, biology, 2-unit maths, and business studies. On the table, these marks are the respective HSC mark for the subject. What's going to happen is that the NESA will combine, or I would say add, all the HSC marks together to give you an aggregate mark out of 500. What an aggregate mark simply means it's the sum of all your HSC marks. Now, this mark will be out of 500, and for this student has achieved 412 out of 500. And then what's going to happen is that this aggregate mark will be converted into an ATAR rank, which is going to be out of 99.95. In the past, what we find is that a number of aggregate mark will correlate to a specific ATAR mark. For example, if you achieve an aggregate mark of 450, that will be equivalent to about 99.1. And then you can see on this table, 400 will be equivalent to a 94.5, and then etc. all the way down to say 150, that will be an ATAR of 44.7. Okay, does this all make sense? Difference between HSC mark and ATAR? Yes? Okay. Don't worry, we have time at the end. You can ask us at the very end. All right, next. The next question that students love to ask us is that this idea of scaling and ATAR calculation. How does that work? All right, so before we start, some of the common questions. Does scaling really matter? All right, a very legitimate question. I thought all subjects are treated the same. You know, another very commonly asked question. And thirdly, I should do easy subjects to get a high ATAR versus I should do a challenging subject to get an ATAR. All right, very common questions, which will give you the answer right now. So before we give our recommendation, it is important to look at what the highest achievers across the state do with their subject selection. Because if we learn from the best, we will get a good indication on what are the subjects that we should pick. So if we look at this table in 2020, this is a table showing what are the subjects that a typical student who achieved an ATAR of 99 to 99.95, what are the subjects did this particular student pick? As you can see, the top 5 subjects that are commonly chosen among students that can get the highest band were English Advanced. 83% of the people picked this. Mathematics Extension, also 83%. Extension 2 Maths, which is 4-unit maths, 60%. Chemistry, Physics. Now, what does this look like? All right, this looks like the Asian Combo 5. So it's the Asian Combo 5, and it's commonly picked by people who get an ATAR range of 99 to 99.95. And then we can expand this idea further. So again, let's compare the top 5 subjects across different bands. So you have a student who achieved 99.95, as we discussed just then. And then we take another range of a student who achieves around 90 to 90.95. And then lastly, a student who achieves a mark around 70 to 70.95. The top 5 subjects, so the first subjects they pick, all right, is Advanced English for the top 2 bands, and then English Standard for the 70s range. And then for the next 4 subjects, all right, they vary accordingly as well. So the Extension 2 Maths gets picked by Extension 1, Extension 2 Maths. Chemistry, Physics gets picked by a student achieved 99 to 99.95. Biology, Maths Advanced, Maths Extension, Chemistry picked by a student achieved around 90. And then lastly, the band from 70 to 70.95 picked English Standard, Maths Standard 2, Biology, and Business Studies. So what do we know? There must be some inside information about scaling that these students know that help them to achieve these higher results. And then we use a calculator to illustrate this point further. If we pick a student with a high scaling subjects, which are Advanced English, Extension 1 Maths, Extension 2 Maths, Physics and Chemistry, let's say this student gets an HSC mark of 90 across all subjects. This student will get an ATAR of about 98.2. And then we pick another student who picked some of the medium/low scaling subjects, which are Standard English, General Maths, Biology, Business Studies, and then Legal Studies. This student also achieved the mark of 90. You can see the ATAR vary quite a bit. It's about 4 ATAR points. Now, if we illustrate this point further, do you think it's easy for a student to get a mark of 90 for all subjects? All right, the answer to this question is that it's going to be quite difficult. So on average, if we pick a student who gets only 80 across all the subjects, for the student who picked the high scaling subjects, which are the more difficult subjects, hypothetically, this student achieved 80 across every single subject. this student would get an ATAR of around 89.7. So quite a big drop from 98 to 89 if the student only gets 80 across every single subject. So my question for all the audience on the call is, what do you think the second student would get if the second student also got 80 for all the medium/low scaling subjects? I'll give everyone maybe 5 to 7 seconds to think about this. Yeah, so I'll go back to the previous slide. So 90 for every single subject. They differ about 4. All right, so the review. So this student who achieved 80 across all the medium/low scaling subject would only get an ATAR of around 77. So there is a big gap in the ATAR differences if a student does not achieve a high result for the low scaling subject, which also we can see the impact of scaling does to your ATAR if you pick the higher scaling subject and do well in them. Okay, so this is a good illustration to show you the importance of picking more of the difficult subject. All right. Okay, frequently asked questions. 1, what's the benefit of picking 3 unit maths over 2 unit maths in year 11? The short answer to that is the scaling on 3 unit maths is much greater than 2 unit maths, and provided that you do well in 3 unit maths, the impact it has on your ATAR will be significantly higher than 2 unit maths. And also in 3 unit maths, the contents, there's going to be a lot of overlap in the topics. So if you pick 3 unit maths, the techniques you learn in solving those questions will greatly help you in solving the 2 unit question. And similarly, if you pick 4 unit maths, the topics that you learn in 4 unit maths, the techniques you learn in those topics will help you a lot in 3 unit maths. So that's the reason why you should pick that. Second, does my school directly affect ATAR calculation? The answer to this question is no. The actual school rank does not affect ATAR calculation at all. It's your rank within your school that affects ATAR calculation. We'll go through this in more details in the second part of our compass series, where we will go into much more in depth in the idea of subject ranking and ATAR calculation. Next, will I definitely get a low ATAR if I choose a low scaling subject? The answer to this question is also no. As we've seen in the previous example, if you achieve a very high mark for the low scaling subject, you can still get a very high ATAR. It's only when you pick a low scaling subject and then do really badly in those subjects, then you will be punished with the ATAR calculation. Do I get a better ATAR if I study more units? The answer is no. Only the top 10 units will count towards your ATAR calculation. So use your time wisely to get the best result. Should I use and trust the ATAR calculators that I find on Google? The answer is yes, you should use them, but only use them if you know how it works. If you do not know how it works, you'll get a very skewed perception on your final ATAR, because the result they've used to calculate the ATAR from those calculators is your actual HSC mark, which you do not have. The marks you usually enter into these calculators are usually your estimate on what you think you should get, but they're not your actual HSC result. So we suggest you use those ATAR calculators wisely. You only use it when you know how it works. Okay, so that's my part done. We will have a 2-minute short break. Get some water, go to the bathroom. We'll come back in 2 to 5 minutes, where Irene and our panel of expert tutors will go through an overview of the popular subjects. All right, we'll be back in 2 to 5 minutes. All right. Okay, do you have remote control, Irene?
Let me check.
Yep, I think you're good.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. In this part of the seminar, Liv, Andrew, and I will talk to you about some of the most popular subjects in Year 11 and 12, starting off with physics and chemistry. But before we get into that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Irene. Oh, can you go back, James? Yep. So my name is Irene. I am a senior tutor at OpenWisdom Education for science and maths, and I study optometry at UNSW. So I'm going to start off with chemistry and physics. How will physics and chemistry benefit me? So first of all, they're going to give you a good understanding of how the world works. For example, some of the questions you may have right now at this stage are, what is really a chemical reaction? What is a nuclear reaction? How is electricity generated? And these are answers that you will learn through physics and chemistry. Second of all, physics and chemistry can improve your critical thinking skills because oftentimes in exams, you have to apply your knowledge in particular scenarios in order to explain what is going to happen. And that is really going to enhance your critical thinking. They're also going to enhance your creativity, especially with your dev studies. You're going to have to come up with investigations by yourself. And also in order to master some of the ideas that you learn, particularly in physics, you have to come up with imaginary scenarios, which is really going to enhance your creativity in the long run. And lastly, physics and chemistry are very common uni prerequisites, especially with health, science, and engineering subjects. So by doing them in year 11 and 12, you effectively eliminate the need for a bridging course after year 12. So a bridging course is basically a course that is offered by universities for some of the subjects in year 11 and 12 for students that haven't done those subjects but need them for uni. So by doing them in year 11 and 12, you don't have to do a bridging course before you start uni. So we will look at the syllabus for preliminary chemistry and HSC chemistry. So year 11 chemistry has 4 modules. Module 1 is properties and structure of matter. So you will look at, can you go back, James? Thank you. So you will look at how atoms bind together, how molecules form, and some trends in the periodic table. Then module 2 is Introduction to Quantitative Chemistry. This is where you start calculating. So you will learn about calculating the mass of products in a chemical reaction, calculating solutions, and how to balance chemical equations as well. Then module 3 is Reactive Chemistry. You will look at a range of chemical reactions and what actually affects the rate of chemical reactions. And module 4 is Drivers of Reactions. Basically here you introduce energy. So you look at energy changes in chemical reactions. So that's for year 11 chemistry. Then we've got year 12 chemistry or HSC chemistry. The first module is equilibrium and acid reactions. So here you will look at reversible reactions and the solubility of salts and acids. Then in the second module, which is acid and base reactions, you will look at what is an acid, what's a base, how do they react, what are the products, and so on. And you will do a lot of calculations in this module and also in module 5. Then module 7 is organic chemistry. You will learn about what is an organic compound, a whole range of organic compounds. You will look at how they react, what is the structure, what are the properties, and why we use them. And in module 8, applying chemical ideas, you will learn about how to identify and analyze ions and organic compounds. So moving on, year 11 chemistry, year 11 physics, sorry, or preliminary physics. This one has 4 modules as well. So module 1 is kinematics. You're going to analyze motion in a straight line. Module 2 is dynamics. So dynamics is a continuation of kinematics, but now you also introduce forces and you look at how forces influence motion. Module 3 is waves and thermodynamics. So in this module, you look at how energy propagates or is transferred. And in module 4, you look at the basics of electricity and magnetism. So then in HSC physics, or year 12 physics, the first module that you do is advanced mechanics. So advanced mechanics builds on kinematics and dynamics from year 11 physics. And you basically introduce gravity into the equation. So you will see how gravity affects the motion of objects on Earth, as well as planetary bodies. Then module 2 of year 12 physics is electromagnetism, which is a continuation of electricity and magnetism from year 11. Here you will see what the motor effect is and how electricity is generated, as well as the interaction between electric and magnetic fields. Then module 7 is the nature of light. You're going to learn about the behavior of light, as well as the speed of light and its implication with mass, space, and time, also known as Einstein's theory of special relativity. And you will also learn about the wave-particle duality of light and the photoelectric effect. And module 8, from the universe to the atom, you will look at how elements are created by stars and also nuclear reactions and the model of atoms. James, can you change? Okay. So who should pick chemistry and physics? Students that are curious about the world. If anything that I just said is interesting to you, you should definitely choose chemistry and physics because it's very interesting. So if you're curious about those things, you should choose them. Students that enjoy maths. Both of those subjects are very heavy in maths. There's a lot of calculations, both in your assessments and in your final exam and the HSC. So if you like maths, you're probably going to enjoy physics and chemistry as well. Students that are planning on studying degrees related to health, engineering, or science. If there's a particular degree that you have in mind, you can look it up and see what the prerequisites are so that you can choose your subjects accordingly. But if you know generally that you want to get into the science field or the health field, it's a good idea to pick chemistry and physics because you're most likely going to need them anyway. And lastly, self-motivated students. Physics and chemistry are difficult subjects, they're not easy. So the work that you do at school is not enough. You have to do work at home independently. So you need to be self-motivated. All right. Some common misconceptions about chemistry and physics. A lot of students pick these subjects because they scale high and they think that, oh, James, can you go back? Thank you. So they think that high scaling means they're going to get high marks easily, which is not true. The reason why they scale high is because they are difficult subjects or relatively difficult. So if you only want to choose them because they scale high, but you're not actually interested in them, you're probably better off picking a subject that you actually enjoy and you're curious about. Another misconception is, as long as I memorize the content, I will be fine, which is not true. In both chemistry and physics, you need to apply the knowledge that you learn. Very rarely is there any questions about recalling information. You usually just have to apply your knowledge to answer the question. Then I don't need to be good at maths to succeed in chemistry and physics. 30% of the marks, approximately 30% of the marks in HSC exams for chemistry and physics are calculation-based, which means that you do need to have a very solid understanding of basic maths. And also, if you do maths in year 11 and 12, that's obviously going to help you as well. And lastly, chemistry and physics have a lot of practicals. So a lot of students think that pracs are just an opportunity to talk to your friends during class time, which is not true. Pracs make up a very large percentage of your mark. So at least twice you're going to have a prac exam. You're going to have one in year 11 and one in year 12. And the weighting is going to be anywhere between 15 and 40% for that assessment. And then in your exams, so the HSC, the trials, the preliminary exams, pracs are also going to be assessed. So pracs, as you can see, make up a very large percentage of your mark, and you need to take them seriously. All right. So now on to some tips for acing chemistry and physics. First of all, write up detailed scientific reports after each prac that you do. Just like you would write notes for the theory that you learn, you also need to write notes for your pracs. And the way that we write notes for pracs in science is through scientific reports. So the reason why you want to do this is it's going to help you understand the purpose of each step of the prac, because it forces you to recall what you did and also kind of explain it. It helps consolidate your knowledge of the content that is related to the prac, because otherwise you can't really explain it in a report. It improves your scientific skills and understanding of each component of scientific reports, such as the hypothesis, the method, the conclusion, the results, and so on. And if you do science or health or even engineering at uni, this is a very important skill that you need. And lastly, it simplifies your revision before the prac exams and your final exams, because as I mentioned before, pracs are assessed in your final exams. Tip number 2, you need to question the implications of everything that you learn. Basically, you need to be curious about the subject. If you're not curious, do a subject that you're actually curious about. So how does X interact with Y? Why does this process happen? And how does it relate to other content that I've learned previously? These are all questions that are going to help you understand the content very deeply. And lastly, tip number 3, you can never do too many practice questions. If you have questions, or if you can get your hands on practice questions, you should absolutely answer them in physics and chemistry. So that could be past papers, which you can find online, any questions from your textbooks, any questions that you come up yourself, or any questions that your teacher gives you, or the OpenWisdom resources. Lastly, if you need more tips on how to study effectively for chemistry and physics, we had a seminar earlier this year, which you can find on the OpenWisdom Education YouTube channel. And that's it from me, and I'm going to pass it on to Lee.
James, could I just have control of the remote?
Yep, I'll give you the remote now.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Hey everyone, I'm Liv and I'm an English tutor here at OpenWisdom. I currently study a Bachelor of Arts and Advanced Studies in Media and Communications at the University of Sydney. And I completed my HSC in 2019 when I received an ATAR of 99.25 and was an all-round achiever. So this means that I achieved the highest band in 10 of my units. And for me, that included English Advanced and English Extension 1, which I will be talking about today, along with English Standard. So, James, sorry, could you? Oh yeah, all good. Today, I'm going to be taking you through all the different English subjects available for you to study in years 11 and 12. I'll focus mainly on the two most popular choices, that's English Standard and English Advanced, but I'll also speak about English Extension 1. So we will begin with EALD, and this is English as an additional language or dialect. So this unit is for students whose first language is not English, and it allows these students to develop and refine their spoken and written English skills. It's about developing their English language proficiency and therefore is reserved for that group of students. Then we move on to English Standard. In this subject, students are strengthening their knowledge and understanding of literature. And then for those students who find themselves a bit more passionate about English, we have English Advanced. And here students are further developing their understanding of and ability to evaluate the value of literature. And then for those students who are even more passionate about English, we have English Extension 1. So this is taking students a step further as they analyze how texts reveal the diversity of ideas and perspectives in societies and cultures, both past and present. Now, there is also English Extension 2, which can be taken in Year 12. And this is for students who are taking English Advanced and English Extension 1 and wish to produce their own body of work or a major project where they work with their teacher or mentor. But this is certainly reserved for those students who find themselves extremely passionate about English and want to produce their own work. Okay, so now let's take a closer look at the course content for English Standard, Advanced, and Extension 1. So just one thing to note right off the bat is that there's only 3 modules in Year 11 English, as there are only 3 terms in Year 11. And another thing to note is that there are no prescribed texts in Year 11 English. So this means that there's no set list of texts, and instead it's up to the teachers to decide which text you study. By contrast, in Year 12, NESA provides a prescribed text list, which all schools must choose from. So you'll see some commonality amongst the schools. So just to kind of briefly take you through what we have in each module, we begin with this reading to write module. It's common across both Standard and Advanced. And as the name suggests, you're reading high quality text to help you improve your own writing, particularly creative writing. Then Module A focuses on communication technologies and how these shape the way we understand our text and multimedia. And Module B is a close study of a substantial, well-regarded literary text, so the more traditional analysis that we may be more used to. Now let's take a look at Year 11 English Advanced. As you can see, we have this common module again, reading to write. The texts are different, however, and there are different criteria used to mark the different works, but the module itself is common. Then in Module A, narratives that shape our world, students are looking at the powerful role of storytelling in both past and present societies. And this involves a comparative study of 2 texts. In Module B, there is then a close study of literature. And so this is similar to that English Standard module, where students are required to study a text in great depth. And this sets you up for Year 12 English Studies, which, as I will mention later, is, a lot of students do find it to be a big step going from Year 10 to Year 11. And so that's why we encourage you to seek out assistance wherever you need. And just to take a look at English Extension 1 in Year 11, as you can see, there are 2 modules as opposed to that 3-module structure, starting off with this common module. Now, the name might be a bit misleading. It's not common to Standard and Advanced. It's actually just common across English Extension 1 students. And this is looking at the kind of cultural impact of text. And then in topic 2, students look at a related project where they actually pick 2 texts to study comparatively on their own. And as you can see, this is the sort of difference between our standard advanced and extension, is that there's this more independent study. Now we can take a look at HSC or Year 12 English. So as you'll notice, we have this 4-module structure, and the first module begins in term 4 of Year 11. So that's just something to keep in mind. Once again, we have a common module, common to both standard and advanced. And this is focusing on how text reflects the human experience, which may not mean much to you at the moment, but it will by the time you're finished Year 12. Module A then requires students to study a prescribed text in detail. And then Module B looks at how students will then look at how text, the construction of the text, works to produce meaning. And then finally, Module C is the craft of writing. And this is a creative writing unit where students study at least 2 short texts so that they can develop their own creative writing style. And you'll be looking at a range of texts, that being imaginative, discursive, and discursive. Then shifting our focus to advanced, we can see this 4-module structure again, the common module as well. And after that module, students then move to Module A. This requires them to compare 2 texts, one being an adaptation of the other, and something that you will have practiced in preliminary English. Then in Module B, we have this critical study of literature, once again going in depth into a well-regarded text. And lastly, this craft of writing. Same name as the standard English course, however, students usually engage with more complex texts. And just to finish off, we'll take a look at English Extension 1. Here, once again, this 2-module kind of structure as opposed to 4. The first one is common across English Extension students, looking at context and how that shapes storytelling, and also creative writing. And then in the second module, each school picks their own elective for students to study. And so this will determine the text and ideas that they're exploring. Now, at the moment, that probably sounds like a bit of an information overload, but essentially what you need to take away is that for standard and advanced English, the modules in Year 11 prepare you for Year 12 very nicely. And so each kind of Year 11 module feeds into its respective Year 12 module. Now, a lot of students do find, as I've mentioned, that there is quite a large jump from Year 10 to Year 11 English. And, whilst you are preparing across 11 and 12, that kind of jump in the beginning can be a bit startling. So don't be afraid to seek out extra assistance or tutoring wherever you may need. And, starting early with that assistance is going to make the difference. That's going to help you build that ground that you need for Stage 6 English. So now to the question on every student's mind. Which level of English should I choose? So given that it's compulsory to take 2 units of English to complete the HSC, it's very important that you choose the level of English that is most appropriate for you. So the first thing to consider is eligibility. Your school may have already set out a certain grade or mark that you might need for each level of English. However, I really recommend having a chat to your teacher about which level they see fit. As I mentioned before, in order to take EALD, English must be your second language or dialect, and you must have been educated overseas or at an Australian educational institution with English as the language of instruction for 5 years or less prior to commencing the Year 11 course. With the other levels, as a general rule, achieving a satisfactory mark in Year 10 will allow you to take English Standard, whilst you may need a higher mark to choose English Advanced, just given the kind of level and the nature of the subject. And then to take English Extension 1, you must also be studying English Advanced. Once you've considered your eligibility, then you want to take into account your English skills and level of ability. So English Standard is for those students who feel prepared for independent study, but still require more assistance in developing their extended writing. For those students who feel more competent in thinking and writing critically about text, then English Advanced is a good option. And as the name applies with English Extension 1, this is targeted to students who feel they want to extend themselves to critically evaluate more complex text. Now, the next thing to take into account is, in my opinion, one of the most important, and that is personal interest. How interested or passionate are you about English? At the end of the day, you're the one who will be taking the subject, reading the texts and writing about them. So you want to feel confident that you're in the right level for you. One of the distinguishing features between standard and advanced that most students find to be a deciding factor is that Shakespeare is not a prescribed text in English Standard. So that may be something to take into account and kind of gives an indication of the difference in the level of text. Then for those students who do have a genuine passion in understanding and unpacking text and expressing their opinions, English extension is a great but also challenging choice to take. So do be wary of that and try and choose based on your interest, but also something we can take into account is scaling. So this shouldn't be the only deciding factor, but as we've mentioned, it is a factor to consider. So statistically, a larger proportion of the cohort in English Advanced is awarded a Band 6. But as I'll speak about later, this doesn't mean easy marks. High scaling doesn't mean easy marks, as Irene mentioned as well. And it can be difficult to break into that Band 6 bracket, and that's where assistance can come in handy as well. Now, some of you may have ideas about which degree you'd like to pursue at uni, and others are likely just beginning to consider it. But if you have a particular degree in mind, it is a good idea to check whether you're required to take a certain level of English. So some courses, generally those where there's more of a writing or literary focus, will specify that English Advanced is a prerequisite for taking the course. So that means you need to take the course take English Advanced in order to pursue that course. So if you're thinking about heading into this area post-school, just be aware of that. That can be a factor that you take into account. Okay, so once you've kind of chosen the level that's right for you and you're in studying English, there are a few common misconceptions that we need to work through. And these are misconceptions that your friends may be thinking, you may be thinking yourself, and it's something that's good to just get out of the way before we begin. So firstly, as Irene did mention in science, the same applies in English. High scaling doesn't mean easy marks. So yes, it's true that some subjects do scale higher than others, but don't go picking English Advanced because you think it will automatically boost your ATAR, right? Instead, it's important to choose the level that you think you can succeed in. And if that is English Advanced, then that is great because you also have that scaling advantage, but you do need to do well in order for that to kind of take effect. Secondly, each level has its challenges. So while you may think that English Extended will be much easier, it's still a stage 6 course. And that means that you're going to need to engage in independent study and keep on top of your work. And that applies across all levels of English. Leading me to my third point, and that's that you'll need to learn your text thoroughly, regardless of whether you pick standard, advanced, or extension. So whilst online summaries and guidebooks are a useful resource to help build your understanding of a text, you still need to actually read the text to ensure that you have an understanding of how all the parts are working together to create meaning. And finally, writing practice essays and memorizing them will not be enough to achieve a Band 6. But when I say that, I mean just writing out your memorized essay. One analogy that I've had kind of explained to me that I think works really well is to think of your essay like a Lego kind of piece, right? You have all these individual pieces that work to build this great model, but every kind of model needs to be adapted, especially depending on the question. And that's something I'm going to go into a little bit later. But you will have to take out pieces and add on pieces. So just submitting that one essay that you've written isn't going to be enough to break into that Band 6. So just something to keep in mind. Now that we've gotten those misconceptions out of the way, let's look at some tips for acing English. So number one, this word is one that you will become very familiar with, and that is your rubric, right? Your rubric, each module has this thing called a rubric that outlines the content, the ideas, and the kind of key terms for that unit. So before you begin each module, it's important to unpack this rubric and know it back to front, because this is where your questions are drawn from. This is where the content is drawn from. This explains essentially what that module is going to be about and what you're going to be looking out for. So that's something to definitely unpack at the beginning and something that your teachers will likely take you through, but if not, important to look at either way. My second tip is to move away from recounting, and that's kind of description, towards analysis and synthesis. So it can be very tempting to simply recount the plot or ideas of a text, but this is going you out from receiving that Band 6 or Band 5 that we all want to achieve. Teachers are looking for your analysis of the text. This means selecting and discussing evidence or quotes and literary features and how they work together. Now, each module rubric mentions this idea of showing your personal voice. What does this mean? This means finding and discussing the deeper meaning of a text and how all its elements, that includes plot, setting, characterization, language, form, and context, words you'll have heard before, how these all work together to convey this. This is what analyzing and synthesizing means. So we're moving from the who, what, when, where of the text to exploring the why, why the author has chosen certain elements and how these work together to impact the story or ideas that they're discussing. And this is what's going to be able to shift you into those top 2 bands, where we want to be sitting. And last but not least, read and view widely. So, when we think about a text, everyone has a different interpretation of each text. Reading about what others think about your text is a great way to build your own opinion. Now, it's not cheating, as long as you're not directly plagiarizing people's ideas, but instead thinking about whether you agree or disagree with their opinions and their interpretation and why. This is what will build that personal voice that will set you apart from other students. Now, this is actually a really fun tip, I would say, because you can seek out TED Talks, podcasts, YouTube videos, opinion articles, content that is not just essays, but looking at people's opinions, and they're often delivered creatively. One thing you can do is even try asking your teacher if they have any recommendations, as they've probably sought out this kind of content as well in their study of the text. And yeah, as I've said, this is a fun way, kind of a way to introduce a bit of fun into what could be a bit of a stressful period. So look out for these kind of examples. Like, for example, there's the Much Ado About Shakespeare podcast that the Times has created. The Guardian releases several opinion articles on text, and these will help you to build your own voice. Now, that's all from me. I wish you the best of luck with English next year. And if you only take one thing away from this seminar, I hope it's that at the end of the day, a surefire way to ensure your success is to choose the right English level for you, one that's based on your personal interests and your goals, whatever they may be. Thank you. So now I'll just pass over to Andrew, who will talk about maths.
Hello. Could you hear me well?
Yep, awesome.
Yep.
Really
May
good
I please-
presentation. I'll just give you the okay.
Thank you. It's okay. There we go. Perfect. So, hey everyone, I'm Andrew. I am currently a tutor at OpenWisdom. Studying advanced, or not studying. I'm tutoring advanced extension to mathematics, and I'm also tutoring physics. So currently, I'm the 3rd year in my university. I'm studying a Bachelor of Aeronautical Engineering, majoring in space, as well as a Bachelor of Project Management. During my 1st year, I was invited to the Special Studies program for UCID, where I worked directly with the lecturer with my seminars and my tutorials. So I graduated from Sydney Boys High in 2019 after receiving a 99 in Extension 1 and a 97 in Extension 2. So before we even look at the details of the math, we see the benefits of it. So there are 3 main things. It improves our problem solving and analytical skills. So a lot of the problems in our real world are tackled with mathematical concepts. So without issues, we may reach an optimal solution, but there are many methods to reach it. And we need to find this optimal solution so that we can save our resources, cost, and time. Maths is quite a major section in that area. So it's also applicable in numerous careers. So if you're pursuing a career in STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and maths, that will come in very handy and be quite common. Also, if you're working with numbers, think business or finance, that will also come in handy. And then university prerequisites. A lot of unis nowadays are asking for Extension 1 or advanced maths. So if you take those during your high school life, you won't need a bridging course. Or if you take those, you get a head start during your 1st year maths courses. So let's look at the different maths levels. So I'm mainly a tutor for advanced to Extension 2. So I'll be covering those. But sometimes you'll see Extension 1 and Extension 2 being called 3U and 4U. That just means that they correspond to giving 3 units and 4 units to your HSC respectively. So with standard maths, a lot of it is improving our understanding and our confidence in maths. We'll be using it through real-world applications. As we get to advanced, we'll improve our awareness as a way of, I guess, viewing the world through reflection and reasoning. And then once we get into 3-unit maths or Extension 1, we get into the more thorough proofs and mathematical modeling. And then when we get to extension 2, that's when we have strong mathematical manipulative skills. And then that's when we also have a deeper understanding of fundamental ideas such as algebra or calculus. So, first of all, preliminary maths. Preliminary would stand for year 11. So we'll go through concepts like functions or trigonometric functions, which deals with an input and an output. And then calculus, talking about rate of change. Exponential and logarithmic functions is another extension of functions. And then statistical analysis is talking about how data works and how it's analyzed. Yep. Preliminary extension 1 maths. We'll continue on functions and trigonometric functions, but this will just get a bit more complicated, same with calculus. And then combinatorics. This is to do with the maths of counting. So it sounds pretty basic when I say it now. So you'll be working with probability, counting, and ordering objects. Then once you get to preliminary extension 2, oh, sorry, not preliminary extension 2, HSC advanced, that is when you develop on your preliminary skills and you work on, sorry, James, it's just a bit of lag right now. There we go, HSC advanced. Once again, these topics are quite familiar. We'll have our financial maths, which works on numbers. Let's think compound interest, statistical analysis, calculus, functions. They're all going to be developed on further.
Sorry, I think there's a bit of background noise in the some of our audience. If you could please just double check to mute yourself, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So moving on to HSC extension 1 math. This is when we go into our mathematical proofs, our models. We work with our proofs. We talk about vectors, which is something with direction and magnitude. And then similar functions, similar things that we've covered before, trigonometric functions, calculus, and statistical analysis. But this just gets more complicated. Going into HSC extension 2 maths, this is when we really need to think rigorously with mathematical rigor, as they would say. Ooh. Sorry, James. There's just, I think I've lost control of the remote. And I also think you might be muted.
Sorry, yes. Can you control it now?
Yes.
Give me a second. Yeah, I think you should be good. Yeah. You should be good.
Okay. Yep, nice. So I'll just continue on from earlier. Extension 2 maths in the HSC, you'll have still your vectors, your proofs, and your calculus. But then we'll introduce 2 new topics, mechanics, which is working with forces. If you do physics, this will be quite familiar around that area. And then complex numbers, which is a whole new branch of mathematics, which is quite useful in a lot of things like control systems moving forward in your careers. There we go. So now that we've gone through everything, what are the levels that we choose? First of all, our eligibility. Even when taking standard, which is the base 2-unit course, I would recommend that you have a satisfactory outcome from year 7 to 10 maths, because everything from there builds on to year 11 and 12. Advanced, instead of a satisfactory outcome, you should have a good outcome. And you should be able to know how to work with your previous formulas, such as index rules. And then once you go to extension 1, you must do mathematics advanced as a prerequisite. And for extension 2, you must take extension 1 as prerequisite, or as a co-requisite, as they would say. All right, now that you know you're eligible, let's look at our maths level. Let's say I'm not that confident with it. I pick standard. Once I get to advanced, I start to develop a better understanding of things, and I want to improve on my maths. I would choose maths advanced. Okay, now I'm pretty competent in my critical thinking. I should go for 3 units of maths or extension 1. And then for students who have a strong conceptual knowledge and who have been doing well through year 7 to 11, I would recommend Extension 2 Math because it allows you to explore new areas of mathematics. All right. Now it comes to a section that I would say is more important than a lot of people think, your interest. So even before we get into it, even if you're not very good at a subject, if you put in the effort because you're interested in it, you will see a lot more results than just raw talent. And that's something that we'll go over in a bit. So with standard, I'm aware of maths and I know that it's applied in areas around me. But once I get to advanced, you start to enjoy it. You like problem solving, I would choose that. And then with extension 1, a lot of people who enjoy maths, enjoy critical thinking of it, they'll have a good time with the proofs and the concepts explored. And then once you get to extension 2, a lot of that deviates from your formulas, from your reference sheet, and then a lot of it comes down to just thinking about it. So if you're passionate about it, a lot of further applications are required. I would choose extension 2. Our next part is our scaling. So for extension subjects, instead of listing from bands 1 to 6, we have E1 to E4. But another exception to this is that for extension 2, because marks are out of 100, you will have bands. So let's look at standard. Quite a small percentage relative to the others of students are awarded a band 6 at around 4%, and then 15% awarded a band 5. As you get higher from advanced to extension 2, we have a larger percentage of students who achieve a higher band. But as with science and with English, that doesn't always mean that you should necessarily pick it. It also just means that it's much more difficult. You need to put in the time, you need to put in the effort. And now finally, let's see how it's applicable to uni. So if you just want 2 units and to get maths over and done with, I would choose standard. If you're picking something like finance, business, or economics, it's good to have a nice background knowledge and understanding. I would pick advanced. Once you go into STEM courses, engineering, computer science, then I would go for 3 units of maths. And with 4 units of maths or extension 2, this isn't a current prerequisite for any university courses, but if you're looking to accelerate or you're taking advanced first year courses, I would go for that. So, common misconceptions. A lot of these things you might have just seen floating around. There's only one method to reach the solution. A lot of the time, that's not true. With your tutors, you might go through method 1, method 2. A lot of these will vary in length, but they'll usually get you to the same answer. What I like about them is that if I have extra time, I can apply this extra method at the end to use as a form of double checking. So, are marks mainly awarded for the final answer? Not at all. Let's look at a mark or a question that has 4 marks. A lot of the time, your process will make up 3 marks while your final answer is 1. Even if you don't understand how to get to that final answer, just write as much as you can down and you will be able to get marks from the marker for understanding part of it. Another thing, maths requires innate talents. So a lot of people tell me, oh, I'm not into maths. I shouldn't take it. I wasn't good. So this comes down to practice over your talents. So as you go to year 11 and 12, the amount of effort you put in will make up a much larger proportion of your marks. And then last thing, maths is just memorizing. If you take a look at the formula sheet for year 11 and 12, you'll see 3 to 4 pages of just formulas. So if I memorize all that, that won't get me far. I still need to understand how to apply those formulas and what each of them mean. So a lot of it is down to creativity, how you think of the question, and how you apply your respective methods. All right, let's go through tips for acing maths. Of course, before even getting into it, you'll hear a lot of people say practice makes perfect. I would say perfect practice makes perfect. If you just grind out questions on and on, that won't get you far. You need to understand. So when it comes to practicing, I like to also use past papers, as I recommend all of you. Practice using both open book and timed. So in an exam, let's take 3 unit, for example. You get 2 hours for 70 marks. 4 unit, that goes to 3 hours for 100 marks. First of all, I want to focus on my accuracy. I give myself a good amount of time at home to do open book exams. And then Once I get the hang of it, I need to do them quickly under time conditions. The benefit of finishing them quickly is that you also get time to double check and you apply your other methods so that you can make sure that your answers are as accurate as they can be. Second tip, distributing your time in exams. So a lot of problems which I still see with some of my preliminary students is that they just don't finish the exam on time. You are capable of doing it. You just need to space out your time. They're awarded for both the process and the final answer. If you see yourself on a question for too long, ask yourself, is it worth taking this long? If not, I recommend you mark it and then you go back to it later. Third tip. This is not emphasized enough, I believe, but you have to format your working out. The marker only gets a set amount of time because the marker is paid per hour. So if they can't find your answer or can't find something that they're looking for in the criteria, they'll just skip it and you'll lose marks. You need to ensure that the marker will understand your thought process. Same with even writing notes. You need to format that so when you look back, you can reflect on what your thought process was, what the teacher told you, and how you can work on emulating that in an exam. So I would just want to conclude that maths takes a lot of discipline. So if you put in the time to study effectively and frequently, perfect practice makes perfect, you will see results. So don't worry too much about, oh, am I talented at this? Am I good at this? Just put in the effort, really pay attention when you're at OpenWisdom or when you're at school, and I guarantee that you'll see results. I think passing back to you, James.
Awesome, thank you. It's a very informative session on maths. Okay, so, and then we're still good with time, 10 minutes left. What I'll do is that I'll quickly run through our OpenWisdom method of success for 5 minutes, and then we'll leave the last 5 minutes for Q&A. So the first question we'd like to ask is there an optimum strategy for year 11, 12? Many parents, when they come to us, they like to ask, is year 11, 12 just about hard grinding of doing as many questions as I can, memorizing essays? Now, before I answer this question, I would like to use an analogy, a Monopoly game. Now, Monopoly game is a lot of the people will think it's a game of chance, and a lot of other people might argue that it's a game of persuasion. Now, if you run this game on a modeling system 10 million times, completely randomized, consistent of 50 turns for each game, you would be surprised by the result. What you find is that there is an uneven distribution of the chances of a particular piece landing on a particular property. The colored bar, as you can see, indicates of the frequency of a piece landing on that property. The bigger the bar is, the higher the chance. So what do you see? You see that properties that are colored in orange and properties that are colored in red have a greatest chance of being fallen upon. Now, what this means is that the optimum strategy to play the game of Monopoly is not completely randomized. The strategy is that you should probably, once you land on an orange or red property, you should purchase it. So a game that seems like Monopoly, which is completely up to chance, you can see some form of pattern. The same can be applied for HSC. After we've taught many students in the past, we have found some form of pattern in getting a very high result. Now, if you can remember the slide that I talked about at the beginning with year 12, as just to recap, only the marks in year 12 counts towards your HSC. You would find that only 4 particular exams in year 12 that significantly contribute to your result, which are your 4 assessments. Your class marks do not count towards your HSC. In year 7 to 10, there's a misconception that your class mark counts towards your final report. It could be true or it could not be true. But for year 12, only the assessment count towards your HSC. And obviously the final HSC exam. What this means is that the way we focus our tuition lessons, they have to be focused on your assessments. There we go. Our focus will be on the assessments. So for example, if we look at English tuition at our center, every term we have a wide variety of text. If we use an example, take 4 sample schools, Trinity, Ravenswood, St. Ursula's, and Caringbah. In a year 11 setting for advanced English, in term 1, the texts are quite similar across all schools. But what you find is that after you finish term 1, the schools varies quite dramatically in terms of the text that they do. So the way that our classes are run for English is that it requires a high degree of flexibility that caters to your school progression. So most of our lessons that are English lessons, they are run in a way that's focused on your school text and which you'll get examined on. So they're very much fluid in the way that the lessons are being taught. Whereas if we take maths, for example, the same 4 schools across the 3 terms, across the first 3 modules, you'll see that most schools will do similar maths topics in a similar sort of progression. In module 1, most schools will probably do functions, module 2 will be trigonometry, and module 3 will be on statistics, which means that the math lesson requires much more structured learning, and also it has to be synchronized with your school. So to summarize the style of our learning, our OpenWisdom English lessons are taught very much in a one-on-one and private setting. The content is very much fluid. It depends on the school's progression and the choice of text that you've been allocated, whereas our math lesson is very much structured. Every week you'll get a weekly booklet, and then the classes are usually run in a small group of 1-on-2 or 1-on-3 that will synchronize with your school progression, making sure that you get the max result. And then OpenWisdom Science is somewhere in the middle, depending on the school progression as well. So that summarizes our style of teaching. And here's a sample of our year 11 weekly booklets you will be getting, which will cover all the syllabus dot points. And then a list of our tutors at our center, which all this information can be found on our official website. So an example of an English lessons is that some of our tutors will create a little chart that plans out the term ahead. And depending on your school's assessment, we will adjust our learning for your need. For example, this particular year 11 student has an exam, essay during week 9. The way we structure your term will very much depend on your school assessment, where week 1 will look at the context, week 2 and 3 will look at the plot, and then as we progress throughout the term, by week 7 or 8, we would finalize your essay and you'll be ready for exam. And another student at our center would have a different structure. They might have a multimodal speech in week 6, which means that the progression will be a bit different to student A. But regardless what assessment your school throws at you, our center will adjust our learning because it's a small one-on-one setting. We'll make sure you get the success that you need. And lastly, we are one of the centers that will track all our students' results and progression. This is a sample of our year 11 and 12, a small snippet of our students, which school they go to and the marks that they get. We'll make sure that the students, the results are closely monitored and making sure that you'll get the success by the end of year 12. And lastly, here is a list of subjects that are on offer. For maths, we have 2-unit advanced maths, 3-unit extension maths, 4-unit extension 2 maths, and maths standard. For science, we offer chemistry, physics, biology, English, advanced English, standard English, extension 1, EALD, and then we also offer business studies, economics, Japanese beginners, Japanese continuous, and recently we've launched Japanese extension as well. And all this information can be found on our official website. And lastly, if you're interested to trial us in term 3, there's 3 ways to contact us. Either you can go onto our official website, fill out a form under the free trial button, or you can just send us an email using contact us, or email us directly through admin@openwisdomeducation.com. Or if you use a WeChat, you can send us a message and we'll reply to you as soon as we can. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening today. I will leave the last 5 minutes to Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to type into the chat box, and then our tutors should still be online and will answer any questions you have. Yeah, before we wrap up at 5:30, which is in about 3 minutes. All right, thank you so much. Yeah, or you can unmute yourself. You can ask us directly. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. Yep. So for those who are wondering where they can find those infographics that talks about the summary of each subject in year 11 and 12, they can be found on our official website. You just need to go to our website and click courses, and it's an interactive page where you can click through all the subjects we've gone through, and then you can read it in more details during your spare time. Yeah, just to answer that question. All right, we'll give 2 more minutes. If you have any questions you would like to ask us independently, I see some of our own students here as well. You can find us when you come in next, or you can just send us an email if you would like to ask us privately. But yes, okay, we finished 5:30 on the dot. So yes, thank you so much for everyone for coming in today. Yes, thank you for the panel of tutors. If you have any questions, send us an email. But other than that, that's it. Thank you so much.